Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Firdaus bin Umar Asmi. My ID number is 2021104587.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Nabil bin Umar Adam Malik. And my tax number is 2021125283.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Nazrin Farisha binti Muhammad Tala'an. My matrix number is 2021108423.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Intan Farhani binti Mak Yunus and my matric number is 2021131305.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Fauziatul Farah Najwa binti Kamsul and my address is 2021109259.
The Association of Southeast Asian Nations (ASEAN) is a regional grouping that aims to promote economic and security cooperation among its 11 members: Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Timor-Leste, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand and Vietnam. Our group will be presenting about Indonesia in Asian country. The head of the state of the Indonesia is President Joko Widodo. The capital in the Indonesian is Jakarta. The language that used in the Indonesia country is Indonesian. The currency in the Indonesia country is rupiah. The main economic resources from Indonesia country is agriculture, manufacturing, raw material, and tourism.
Indonesia is leading ASEAN just after it came out of its G20 presidency. Indonesia lead the world top 20 economies in a year marred by the Russia-Ukraine war, which sparked food and energy crisis. The Bali summit saw world leaders agree in a joint declaration stating that most members strongly commended the war in Ukraine. The symbolic handover of the ASEAN chairmanship from Cambodia to Indonesia and officially lead ASEAN starting on January 1 with the theme of ASEAN Matters, Epic Syndrome of Growth. Indonesia intends to promote ASEAN's relevancy to its people, the Indo-Pacific region, and the world. The slogan, coupled with President Joko Widodo's remarks in Phnom Penh, also hint that economic growth would become a huge part of Indonesia's chairmanship. Political decentralization in the post-Suharto era has brought more power to the regional government, and this development implied that regional decision-making has become more affected by the regional religious context. In strict Muslim area, implemented policies can include the regional banning of pork businesses or the obligation for women to wear the scarf, while in Christian regions, located in most eastern Indonesia, such policies seem impossible to be implemented. In terms of ethnicity and religion, a Javanese Muslim will enjoy more popular support as the majority of the Indonesian people consists of Javanese Muslim. In lower political position, and depending on the regional religious context, political leaders that are non-Muslim are possible. With regard to social position in society, there are a few categories that all enjoy popular support from part of the people. These categories include army general, businessmen, technocrats, and leading Muslim scholars.
Now let's move on to the economy of Indonesia. Southeast Asia's largest and one of the world's fastest rising market economies is Indonesia. Indonesia is categorized as a newly industrialized nation because it belongs to the G20 and has a middle-income status. Indonesia has a mixed economic system that combines various private liberties with centralized economic planning and government regulation. The rupiah is the official currency of Indonesia. The main industrial sectors include petroleum and natural gas, textiles and apparel, mining, footwear, plywood, rubber and chemical fertilizers. With 43% of the country's GDP in the service sector in 2015, Indonesia's economy is extremely important. However, only 14% came from agriculture. The world's largest exporter of palm oil in 2019 was Indonesia.
The background social of Indonesia. The capital city of Indonesia is known as Jakarta. Indonesia is ranked 4th in the world with a large population, which is 275 million in 2022. Most of the population is 8, 14 to 30 years old. Through this, Indonesia is seen as a young country with a demographic divide. Because of that, it caused Indonesia to need more job opportunity as well as provide more low-cost labor to improve the country economy. Next, Indonesia has 26.36 million total of poverty people in September 2022, and it increased by 0.20 million people in May 2022. One of the main causes of poverty in Indonesia it is because of limited job opportunity. Next, in August 2022, the number of unemployed Indonesians is 8.42 million people. This is because of the economic growth is smaller than the growth of the labor. Additionally, this is because of the level of education is too low. This can cause less knowledge and less progress for individual and even the country itself. Education is an important element for advancement in social class. When a person's level of education is high, its social status also will increase. Last but not least, Indonesian money is known as Indonesian rupiah. 3,540.595 rupiah equivalent is same to RM1 ringgit Malaysia. Next, the background culture aspect of Indonesia. Indonesian culture was formed through a long interaction between native customs and external influences. Indonesia is located along an ancient trade route between Far East, South Asia, and the Middle East. Because of that, Indonesia has been influenced by many religions such as Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, and Christianity. 86.1% of Indonesia are Muslim, and the rest are Christian, Hindu, Confucian, and Buddhism. Next, the Western world has influenced Indonesian culture in terms of science, technology, and modern entertainment such as music and many more. However, there are still Indonesians who still maintain their traditional native culture such as the native Betawi, Asmat, Dani, Dayak, Toraja, and others. Indonesia has more than 700 ethnic and racial groups, namely 90% are Malay and indigenous, 5% Chinese, and 5% minority. Next, there are many types of music in Indonesia such as gamelan, samde, and Bali. Additionally, Indonesia is the official language that has been used. Next, there is a major traditional ceremony in Indonesia what's called as Majlis Tambu. It is a local manifestation of Muharram commemoration among the Minangkabau community in the coastal regions of West Sumatra, especially in the city of Parjaman, Bengkulu, Aceh, Gresik, Banyuwangi, and some other part of Java. In Sumatra, this ceremony is called as Tabu. In Java, it called as Surah. In Aceh, it's called as Hasan Hussein. In Padang in West Sumatra, it's called as Tabu or Tabu. On the other hand, among the traditional Indonesian dishes are soto kudus, tudu bakar, tempoyak ikan patin, asinan Betawi, and many more. Indonesian cuisine is originally influenced by Chinese, India, and Western culture. However, Indonesian cuisine also contribute to the cuisine of neighboring countries, especially in Malaysia.
What I'm going to explain is about the domestic issues faced by the Indonesia on politics. We have the regional politics, vaccine diplomacy amid increasing China-US tensions. In 2021, Delta's variant spread throughout the region made vaccine access a major geopolitical issue, particularly against the backdrop of increasing US-China tensions in the Indo-Pacific Indonesia. Indonesia, like many other Southeast Asian countries, turned to China for fast access to vaccines and thus further deepen its economic relationship with the authority. US efforts to deliver vaccines to the region were far slower in comparison, which meant that while many countries in the region would prefer not to rely heavily on China's supply, as they had little choice through much of 2021. China's vaccine diplomacy in countries such as Indonesia cannot be separated from its long-held ambitions in the South China Sea. At the 2021 ASEAN-China Special Foreign Ministers meeting, regional leaders issued a joint statement that expressed appreciation for China's provision of vaccines, medical supplies, and technical assistance, and also pledged self-restraint to avoid complicating or escalating disputes over the South China Sea. It remains unclear, however, the extent to which Southeast Asian countries' deepening dependence on China during the pandemic has modified regional leaders' opposition to Chinese claims to the sea. Next, I'm going to talk about the domestic issues based on politics in Indonesia. It is called external threats. In Indonesia's view, the most serious regional problem involves overlapping claims of sovereignty in the SCS, its partners in the Association of Southeast Asian Countries, ASEAN, and those of China. An increasingly assertive China looms as the region's most worrisome future threat. At the heart of SCS dispute is the 9-dash line, Beijing's claim that it encircles as much as 90% of the contested waters. The line runs as far as 2,000 kilometers from the Chinese mainland to within a few hundred kilometers of the Philippines, Malaysia, and Vietnam. Beijing maintains its own any land or features contained within the line, which confers broadly defined historical maritime rights. Parts of China Dash Line overlaps Indonesia's 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone (EEZ), a concept set out in the 1982 United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea UNCLOS, overlaps with the southernmost reaches of the China's expansive 9-dash line maritime claim. Chinese incursions into the North Natuna Sea have increased, but Indonesia have not pushed back, which has emboldened China's tactics in the North Natuna Sea, from IUU fishing to challenging Indonesia's hydrocarbon rights. Indonesia also faces incursions into its waters by Vietnamese fishing boats as a result of an unresolved overlapping EEZ dispute with Hanoi.
So now let's move on to economics of Indonesia. The Indonesian economy has strong fundamentals, including social stability, a sizable domestic market for goods and services, steadily rising foreign reserve levels just under 139 billion in March 2022, stable prices, and moderate to low inflation. Though non-core inflation has gradually increased in the first half of 2022. However, ongoing trade and investment hurdles fueled by protectionist sentiment, extensive and chronic corruption, inadequate infrastructure, inconsistent enforcing of laws, and labor rigidity continue to impede higher levels of economic growth and prosperity. In middle February 2020, the government of Indonesia submitted an omnibus bill on job creation to the Indonesian Parliament designed to revise more than 70 existing laws, streamline red tape, attract greater levels of investment and full job creation and economic growth. Labor and environmental groups, as well as those opposed to increased centralized government control, have been largely at odds with the business group that favor the bill's streamlined bureaucratic process and flexible labor regulations. Topics include investment, labor, micro, small and medium enterprise policy, research and innovation, then accusation, economic zone, job creation, sections and fines, sovereign wealth, fund activity, and more. Indonesia's Constitutional Court ruled on November 25 that the passage of the Omnibus Law on Job Creation number 11, 2020 was unconstitutional due to opaqueness of the process by which the law was created and the fact that proposed revisions were not fully shared with the public. So next is Social of Indonesia. The first one is particularly women. Receive minimal pay and work with uncertainty. Rural areas are less well served than metropolitan ones when it comes to infrastructure, such as access to electricity or good roads. Rich people and large corporations hold the vast bulk of the land and they reap all the rewards. In a similar vein, there are obstacles to equal access in the educational system and it is underfunded. Because of this, many Indonesian workers are unable to find higher paying occupations. The second one is unemployment. There are numerous elements that contribute to unemployment. For instance, getting a job requires intense competition for people resources. People with better education typically triumph over those with superior scientific abilities. As a result, multiple parties must come up with solutions to solve this issue. So the last one is poverty. One example of a social issue that many developing nations, including Indonesia, deal with is the issue of poverty. Both absolute and relative methods can be used to determine poverty levels. The absolute method is evaluated against predetermined standards such as individuals who live below the standard, while comparing the lower classes' living standards to those of other social classes allows for the measurement of relative poverty.
The conclusion that I conclude for the Indonesian as a ASEAN country is facing ASEAN free trade. The first step that the government must take is to increase the competitiveness of Indonesian product, given the huge population of Indonesia that has the potential to become a market for similar product from neighboring countries. This increase in competitiveness include both superior and non-superior products. Indonesia redlines in facing 2015 MEA can be seen from the comparison of aspects of economic growth, national export growth, and the national per capita income of the Indonesian people. Indonesia redlines when viewed from the aspect of economic growth based on the economic growth reported in 2012 by IMF. It can be seen that in the last 10 years, Indonesia economic growth was very stable at around 5.5% and the 1% with an average growth of 6.11%.